Thank you for inviting me. You may be wondering, what is this Agile Leadership in Technology sessions? Where did it fit into? So I have 10 minutes. So it's one of the biggest challenge. How do I cover this topic in 10 minutes? So I'll give a quick introduction about DXC. DXC is born on April 3rd this month, and it's listed in New York Stock Exchange. It's an integration of two big companies, Computer Science Corporation and HP Enterprise Services. Today, we are $25 billion revenue with more than 6,000 enterprise customers across the world and with 2 lakhs employees worldwide and 50,000 employees in India. So I come from legacy CSE, and now I manage two important functions, end-to-end integrated workforce management. That is, simple way it's called it as people supply chain management, as well as I'm the co-managing director for India, where we have around $200 million of business and 55,000 employees. So let me step back in terms of, as a leader of integrated workforce management, I have two big challenges or two important metrics I monitor that. One is Josh mentioned in his presentation, even after introduction of a lot of technology solution in HR world, still employee productivity is lagging behind. In fact, it is stagnating over the last several years, and in certain industries it's coming down. So one of the metrics I'm going to focus on in my new role in DXC is how do you really improve employee productivity? That metric we call it as dollar on earned, dollar paid ratio, or profitability per employee. The second one is, Josh alluded to that, is how do you really enhance employee experiences? So that we call it as ENPS. That is Employee Net Promoter Score. And we also looking at a way where we can, instead of annual surveys, how can we do monthly small mini surveys and understand employee experience and satisfaction engagement, and how do you really drive changes wherever you see that employee Net Promoter Score is down. And we also developed a model where the profitability per employee or dollar earned, dollar paid ratio and ENPS is correlated to total shareholders return, as well as the earnings per share and other 9 matrices which drives this earnings per share, like revenue growth, profitability growth, customer net promoter score, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm not getting into details. So when we started this journey of integrating these two companies, which have more than 60 years of legacy, into DXC, we faced many, many challenges. One of the biggest challenges we faced is how do you really drive the cultural change in the organization? So my lessons learned, I worked in GE and Toyota. GE and Toyota is a great company. Toyota is known for Toyota production system, and GE is known for Six Sigma at that time. And I was the early master black belt in GE, learning Six Sigma. And many companies hired me after that to implement Toyota production system as well as Six Sigma, but I failed. And the reason is, it is not a management system or it is not a management practice. It is more a culture of the organization. Toyota production system was unique to Toyota because it is embedded in the culture of the organization. Six Sigma initiative was unique to GE because it's embedded in the culture of GE. So when we started the digital journey for DXC, integrating these two companies, one of the biggest challenge I had is how do you build end-to-end integrated workforce management using latest digital technologies, and how do you ensure that this digital technology adopted by employees and it started driving results? In order to do that, we introduced a concept called a digital dexterity. Like, when I was in Toyota, I used to hire a lot of operators who have finger dexterity and manual dexterity. Now we started evaluating what is the digital dexterity of the organization and how the agile leaders drive digital dexterity in an enterprise. So let me step back into what do you mean by digital dexterity and what are the two components of digital dexterity. The first component is how do you drive the pace of the business, or how do you drive acceleration in the business is one of the biggest challenge we are having. That means we don't have the luxury of year and 2 years and 5 years to change our business process. How can we do it faster and speeder way to get the results to the business and employees? In this, we looked at various applications around us, and if you really look at the two concepts today, very prevalent is called Uberization, as well as we call it as the Airbnb-ization of our technology landscape. In these two learnings, we understood it's a good combination of technology and creativity. The HR landscape, even Josh mentioned that it's a good combination of technology and creativity at a play. And we have a lot of technology solutions available in the marketplace, or you can build artificial intelligence platform as well as machine learning platform, but how do you apply creativity in solving employee experiences and increasing the employee productivity was one of our biggest challenge. Here, like Josh mentioned, the speed in which we can implement this technology dexterity is one of the key measures we are looking at. And if you really look at the pace of the business is changing phenomenally. When I was working in Toyota, Toyota used to manufacture new models every 2 to 3 years. Today, they can manufacture in 3 to 6 months new models. So the pace is very important. Again, there was a research conducted. If you really look at 4 or 5 years back, the way we walk, and today we walk 10% improvement in the pace of our walking. We walk faster than what we walked in 3 or 4 years. So pace is very, very important. The second learning is even chicken hatches today 4 times faster than it was hatching 50 years back. So the essence of today's business is how do you drive velocity, how do you drive acceleration, how do you drive speed while implementing technology solution, and how do you ensure that the adoption happens of these technology was one of the biggest learning we had. There, the agile leaders drive pace or acceleration in the business. Then, when we started implementing agile leadership team, we adopted a new competency model, which really, we call it as meta, which focus on 4 dimensions of agile leadership. The first one is, we looked at leaders who can drive mobilization of strategy as well as mobilization of ideas in the enterprise. That is the first letter called M. Do we have the leaders who can mobilize commitment from our employees to drive change in an organization? The second one, we looked at leaders who really drive execution in the enterprise using help of technology as part of the technology dexterity or digital dexterity. The third one, while executing, while mobilizing commitment, can we really transform the business? That is an ambidexterity. Execution and transformation is ambidexterity. We find very few people have that ambidexterity of execution and transformation. The last one, not the least one, while mobilizing commitment, while executing the business results, while transforming the business, can you be an agile leader in this transformation? So that's, we call it as meta framework. We evaluated every leader in DXC who's coming from legacy HPS and legacy CSE for leadership position using this meta framework. There we focused on agility as a #1 competency to drive future growth of the business, and also that is one of the biggest competency in digital dexterity. So I'll take 2 minutes to explain what are our biggest learning in agility, or how agile leaders started driving results in an organization. The first one, compared to waterfall thinking and waterfall methodology, waterfall believed in planning is everything. And in waterfall methodology, it was told that your plan cannot fail, and you have to plan in such a way that you execute it flawlessly. As a result, when employees plan in implementation of technology, they try to hide their failure. And today, in agile methodology, we are moving from planning to preparation. So we are looking at every better plan in the earth will fail, and when you fail, your ability to recover and your ability to learn from that failure and move ahead is one of the competencies we looked at agile leadership. So how do you move from planning to preparation was one of the biggest challenge. So that mindset change was what we are looking at our transformation. The second one is, how do you move from events to process? In waterfall thinking of implementation of technology as well as business process, is everything is an event. Even performance management is an event. Compensation is an event in HR lifecycle management. So how do you move from events to process, which drive end results of better employee experiences and increasing the productivity of employees? So that journey was very, very important. How do you move from events to process? The third biggest learning we had is, we discussed about HR analytics and everything. How do you move from information to interaction and action? So in waterfall methodology, heavy focus was on information. We want more and more data. Even if you get data, we challenge the data and wait for more data. So how do you move from a kind of an information maniac to interaction with the different stakeholders, and how do you really drive what I call is the action for business performance? So in this journey, we adopted 5 R's of agile leadership. With that, I conclude. The first one is, we looked at, is our leaders agile enough from what I call resilience? Do they have enough resilience to drive organizational changes? Second one, we looked at whether our leaders are resourceful. When we looked at resourcefulness, it's not having plenty of resources. How do they mobilize resources? How do they deploy resources? and how do they get better insight from deployment of resources. The third one we looked at is our leaders are responsive enough to meet business outcome in agile form. So responsiveness comes from two dimensions. One is time response. If it takes 5 days earlier, can they do it in 5 hours? If it takes 5 hours, can they do it in 5 minutes? So the responsiveness to situation, how fast you can respond to the business outcome. The last one is our agile leaders are reflective. Do they step back on a week basis or a daily basis? Do they reflect how well they contributed to business, how well they contributed to the performance of organization? The last point, while we looked at most of the agility learning to transform digital dexterity, we predominantly were looking at within our domain, within our industry. So my biggest learning over the last 4 years working with legacy CSC is while transforming organization agility, we have to look lessons from outside our industries. For example, when I was working for GE, I was deployed in Manipal Hospital to do a project on Six Sigma called ACFC, at the customer, for the customer. So one of the complaints we had is the downtime of machines were very high. So they told us, can you put a program to reduce the downtime of machines? So as a black belt, I benchmarked Philips and Siemens and showed to the management saying that our downtime of machine repair is much better than Philips and Siemens. Then I was challenged by my master black belt who was coaching in that project saying that you are combining wrong competitions or wrong domain to ensure that your benchmark is better or worst. He said, think about a life-threatening situation where your house got into fire and whom do you call? I said, fire station. Look at fire station, once you call, how fast they come and set your fire off. That should be a benchmark because you are dealing with a life-threatening situation. So we went to fire station, looked at their time to put off fire in the last 10 incident, and we find compared to our downtime, it was 1/10. They could do it. Then we benchmarked the fire station process of call and resolution of downtime as a benchmark to set our process better. So that was the biggest learning I had. The agility of lessons come not from your domain of HR, not from your domain of IT. You should go out and learn how companies are driving change and driving digital dexterity and transformation by benchmarking outside their industry domain. So my last point here is, while we transform our digital landscape of HR, our ability to really benchmark process and system outside our HR domain, and how do you drive change? So while we design our end-to-end supply chain management in DXC, I looked at 5 companies to set up the entire technology and process. One is Uber. We are looking at a process called Uberization of our talent. We introduced a new technology called Dynamic Talent Cloud. I looked at Unilever, how Unilever manages the entire supply chain of manufacturing and getting into distribution points. Then we looked at Toyota, just in time. They don't have an inventory or bench. What do you call it as procure material and assemble at the point of assembly and get the car out. So we are looking at these 3 companies, how do they manage their supply chain using technology and process and analytics, and we are implementing in our people supply chain management. So thank you very much. I know we don't have time to have any questions. I'll be around for the next 1 hour, and if anybody have any questions, I'm happy to answer. Thank you very much.